Hey guys, welcome back to another holiday movie series. Today we're going to be talking about The Sound of Music, and for everyone that's about to hop in my comments and be like, The Sound of Music isn't a holiday movie, put a pin in it. I don't want to hear that kind of negativity on this video, okay? It's a holiday movie in my household, and as for me and mine, we will worship Julie Andrews and Christopher Plummer. Okay, so this is one of my favorite movies. I love it. It's also part of the reason I became a theater kid, because it was one of the first two musicals my dad ever showed me, that one and Music Man. There are so many lessons to be derived from this movie. 1, never underestimate the nuns. 2, if a boy starts his serenade of love to you by commenting on your age, run, because he's probably a fuck. He's probably not a great dude. 3, singing can solve your problems sometimes. I don't know. I'm kidding. The serious life lessons from that movie that I take out of that: 1, boundaries. Maria is honestly pretty good at establishing boundaries and holding them, both when she was in the convent and when she was the governess for Captain Von Trapp. Remember when he troops out his kids with the sailor's whistle and they all have their own specific call on the whistle that they respond to, and they all have to march in rows and stuff, and then he's like, and governess, you'll respond to, and then he just does some ridiculousness with the whistle, and she interrupts him, and she says, and I'm paraphrasing because I cannot remember the exact quote, but something along the lines of, whistles are for dogs and cats, but not for children, and certainly not for me. And Captain Von Trapp clearly takes a problem with that, because he gets a little sassy. Just to emphasize the point, she whistles with the sailor's whistle at him. And she goes, oh, I'm so sorry. I was so caught up in the confusion of everything that I didn't get your call sign on the whistle. And he just says, you can just call me Captain. And she doesn't say anything in the follow-up to that, but she kind of has this look on her face like, that's great, you can just call me Maria or governess or whatever, right? She establishes that boundary very early on, and she continues to establish those boundaries with the children as well. And I think it's a super healthy example of having firm boundaries and enforcing them without having people feel disrespected, or if they feel disrespected, having them immediately recognize that maybe that's something within them and not you as the person who's establishing boundaries. We love that for her, and we love Captain Von Trapp for respecting the boundaries. You love that. Lesson number 2, and this one is for the Baroness. Know when to bow out. Like, the Baroness was a very interesting character for me, and I've had a very evolved opinion of her over the years since I started watching this movie when I was a kid. When I started watching this movie when I was a kid, I was just like, the Baroness is the bad guy, she's evil, we don't like her, which is a very interesting take for me as a child to have about a movie about a dude who's fighting against Nazis. I was a child. My brain was not fully developed. It's whatever. But as I've grown up, I have realized the Baroness, 1, is 100% not the bad guy or at fault. She had a pre-established relationship with Captain Von Trapp, and she, to the best of her ability, protected that relationship and protected him a little bit. I mean, you see at some point, I don't remember where in the movie, when he basically talks about, like, she saved him from depression and isolation. So she very much had a positive impact in his life. And I think the whole, like, if you want to call it sabotaging him and Maria, was not really sabotaging. It was more, that's my man. What are you doing? And then she realized, she was just like, he does not love me the way that he loves her. And maybe I don't love him the way that he deserves to be loved. And she bows out. Like, I think that's huge. Knowing when, not to say that you're defeated, but knowing when you're done. Knowing when you have nothing left to give to the situation, and when the situation is no longer fulfilling you. That's a huge life lesson. And I honestly think I respect her so much for that entire series of events, right? The next lesson is understand what grief does to you, but understand what your grief does to the people around you, and also understand that you're generally not the only one grieving. The death of Captain Von Trapp's first wife deeply affected him and his children. The way it affected him is that he ran the house like the military, and the housekeeper, forget her name right now, says it at the beginning, like, oh, he's been running this place like a ship ever since his wife died, and the Von Trapp children don't play, they march. His grief changed his entire relationship with his children, and it took years, several governesses, and Maria just calling him on his bullshit for him to realize, oh crap, I've been putting my kids through shit that they had no business going through because I didn't know how to process my grief. Right? Huge life lesson. And that is by no means to say that you should process your grief perfectly. No one knows how to process grief perfectly, especially because no matter what intellectual exercises you do, you don't know how you're going to handle grief until you're in the midst of it. And I think that's just kind of life in general. And I think the most important part about knowing how to process your grief is less having this perfect mannerism in which to process your grief, and more so just the awareness that you have to be cognizant of your grief and how you handle it, and then not lose sight of life, right? And again, you can't control that. Grief is not perfect. Humans are not perfect. This is where we are in life right now. But just remembering that you are not the only one grieving in most situations, and your grief might be different than your children's, so to say, but your grief impacts people around you. And I love that, right? Okay, hold on, my nose. The next life lesson we get is from Max Detweiler, the friend of the Baroness and Captain Von Trapp from Vienna, who's very much just like a freeloader, laissez-faire, like almost bohemian style within the societal constructs of being like upper class. And he drops this quote in the movie that Captain Von Trapp immediately responds very poorly to, and it's just, what will happen as long as it doesn't happen to you. And he's talking about the Nazi occupation of Austria and just the general Nazi takeover of Europe at the time. And it's two very different attitudes between him and Captain Von Trapp, because Max Detweiler is not pro-Nazi, he's pro-survival. I also just realized using Nazi this many times in a video is probably gonna get this video like shadow banned. It's okay, we'll figure it out. Anyways, Max Detweiler is not pro-Nazi, so to speak. He doesn't wish for their occupation. He doesn't wish for their type of governance. He sees them as an inevitability, and so for him, he's just like, well, it's gonna happen. I just need to make sure it doesn't negatively affect me, and then I can just survive in whatever the new situation, the new reality is. And Captain Von Trapp is very much on the other side of those things, where he's just like, no, I'm gonna fight this tooth and nail, and I'll go out with my last breath fighting this occupation, like attack on democracy, blah, 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 right? And I love it, because Max Detweiler is not a bad person. He's not evil. Again, he's not pro-Nazi. He's just very, like, selfish. And there's nothing wrong with being selfish until everyone is selfish. Max Detweiler in the movie is representative of one person, but he's also representative of a lot of people that had the same opinion and idea. And you see very micro interactions throughout the movie of people who were like, hey, the Nazi takeover is inevitable, so you might as well accept it. From all kinds of people in power and people not in power. And I think it's very easy to judge Max and the people like that, because you're just like, you're part of the problem, you're contributing to the loss of freedom and liberty and everything else. And I think you need to approach it with much more sympathy and be like, hey, you have this attitude, but at the end of the day, you're not the only one that this affects. And even if the bad stuff doesn't happen to you at the beginning, it will probably catch up to you. And also, whatever bad stuff you manage to avoid happening to yourself is probably going to happen to somebody else, and possibly someone that you care about, like the Von Trapp family, who were then targeted heavily by the Nazis because of Captain Von Trapp's resistance to their takeover. Obviously, there are many, many more life lessons to draw from this movie. I could watch it 1,000 times and probably not accurately or eloquently talk about them, but you'll just have to watch the movie for yourself and not tell me that it's not a holiday movie, because it is. I do not care that Christmas does not get mentioned once in that movie. But yeah, that's all I have. Thanks for listening to me yap, and I will see you guys for the next holiday movie installment.